Alright, fuckers and fuckettes. Now, here in the USA, we've got this wonderful thing called the EPA. And that EPA is why you're not seeing very many improvements in the motorcycle or automotive industry when it comes to these engines. And pretty much anybody that's ever dealt with aircraft will tell you the FAA is a bigger stumbling block, because even if you do get an engine EPA approved, the FAA, it's going to cost you upwards of $1 million, maybe $2 by the time you get an aircraft engine approved. But for motorcycles and cars, alright, you can go on YouTube here and there's a lot of creative people. I mean, there's guys that have taken some of my old engines that just use rods with holes in them up in the top that turn at 1/4 the RPM instead of half the RPM like a normal cam would. Which I don't give a shit. Hell, I had to have gotten the idea from somewhere. There's guys that they've come up with really efficient Stirling engines. I mean, I've seen a couple that they're getting upwards of 25-30 watts per cc, which is really good for a Stirling engine. Normal is 8 to 10 watts per cc. In order to, I mean, you can get the patent on anything you build. It's what do we get? 300 bucks roughly. And if you're too dumb to do it yourself, you can't file a few simple forms. You got to go through a patent lawyer and shit. Yeah, a couple $1,000 bucks. You can get a patent on an engine. Well, your battle isn't over there. Like, say I built an engine today and sold it to somebody. As long as they kept it in Florida and signed some sort of agreement or something saying that they would keep it in Florida, the EPA would have no jurisdiction. And Florida doesn't really have a testing procedure for engines. They don't really care. I mean, however, if it crossed state lines, or even if I had my own engine that I built on, say, any bike, doesn't matter, and I drove to Georgia, well, then the EPA can whine about that engine, and there's some pretty hefty fines if that engine has not been previously approved. Now, it doesn't matter that your exhaust gases are, you know, a lot less than what the EPA requires. You know, if you've got it on a U.S. interstate and you cross state lines, actually it doesn't even have to be on an interstate, you just have to cross state lines with it, then the EPA has jurisdiction. And they can fuck with you because it's not an EPA type approved engine. Now, most state roads, county roads, and so forth like that, you're covered because the state jurisdiction takes over, all states being sovereign. But say you were actually on an interstate and you had that engine running down the road, then the feds can fuck with you and say, oh, that's not an EPA type approved engine. Well, to get an engine EPA approved, you have to sacrifice one, sometimes two or three, depending on whether or not you get it right the first time, and prove to them that it puts out, you know, within or less than what they say is the max that you can spit out for emissions. And most guys building them out of their garages can't afford to do that. Most guys, you know, most companies, like take GM, take Honda, they could afford it, but they've cut their research budget down to damn near nothing because they're trying to struggle and survive. You know, and this is the same EPA we're talking about that for years had those clog 'em up, fucking rob our gas mileage catalytic perverters. Yes, I know they're called converters. I prefer to call them catalytic perverters on our cars. You know, this is the same EPA that's letting BMW and Honda and several other companies get away with an air bleed system that basically just injects air into the exhaust so that it can pass the EPA shit. But Joey or Billy Bob can't go build an engine that is cleaner and just put it on the road or put it on the market the minute they've got the patent, or you know, you don't even have to have a patent to put to market something. But the way that EPA should be is, instead of having to go through all these hoops, they should say, all right, if you can produce an engine that is cleaner than this maximum, it's legal. But the way they're set up now is, if you start to produce that engine and sell it in more than one state, I had a buddy of mine that was making lawnmower engines a couple years ago, and he was doing just fine as long as he kept them here in Florida. The minute he started selling them in Georgia and Tennessee, man, that EPA was all over his fucking ass because they weren't approved as a stationary engine, and neither one of us knew at the time. In fact, nobody we knew at the time ever thought that there was EPA bullshit on lawnmower engines. And they didn't get him on the emissions, they got him on the noise emissions, which was a simple muffler fix, but meantime it costed him enough he went right out of business because he couldn't afford that shit. You know, he was making a couple $1,000s a month, having the time of his life, retired guy fucking with engines. That's what he liked doing. And I can see his point. I'm a retired guy fucking with motorcycles. That's what I like doing. But little shit like that, you see, whoever created all those EPA regulations that say that you've got to let them test one or two and all this happy shit, now what they should have done is they should have said, hey, look, here's the most you can dump into the atmosphere, here's the most noise you can put out. Stay under that, you're okay. But the government, being the government, they don't think things through so well, so that's hindered productivity. I mean, literally, there's a lot of guys that are scared. There's a lot of fucking engines right there on YouTube, and some of you know that, yeah, I've been talking to you, and some of you know it's a pain in the ass to get past the EPA. Some of y'all have explained a lot of things to me that I don't understand half of it and don't want to, but I do understand that the EPA itself is what's scaring a lot of people from producing, whether on a small scale or mass producing, really super efficient engines. You know, and there's another thing too, is this is the same EPA that banned diesels. Yet I can close these doors, fire up a diesel, I'm not going to die. I might get a little headache, but that diesel engine's going to shut off before I die, because it's going to run out of air before I do. Whereas with a gas engine, I'm a dead motherfucker. So you tell me which one is safer and cleaner for the environment. And a turbo diesel doesn't blow all the soot like the old normally aspirated diesels. Supercharged diesel, yeah, there might be a little bit of soot. And there are clean enough diesels to where you just don't get that soot. I mean, most of the time you see that black smell, there's my goddamn phone. Alright, holler at y'all fuckers and fuckheads later. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about diesels. Now, turbo diesels, you can make those to where they are clean. They are far cleaner than anything gas. And I can give you several illustrations. Man, there's a goddamn phone again. Alright, now where was I again? I'm going to shoot that phone. Oh no, that wasn't where I was. We were talking about diesels. The turbo diesels can be made a lot cleaner than gas, and I mean, most people my age, we've either had one or we've known somebody, and I've rigged up a few for kids where, you know, we all had a 79 through an 83 Little Rabbit turbo diesel, and the EPA claimed 60 miles to the gallon and we were getting 70, and most of us tweaked them up to where we were getting 90 and 100 miles to the gallon on a damn highway. But around 87 they banned the automotive diesels for U.S. manufacturers, even though you could still get a Mercedes diesel or foreign diesel brought in. Pretty much anything in the U.S., if it's not a 3/4 ton or bigger truck, you're not getting a diesel. But let's look at some diesel fuel economy. Sure, that diesel might put a little soot in the air, but okay, Yanmar D36 diesel outboard engine. Now it pulls the same prop due to torque. Diesel has generally 3 times the torque as a gas engine, roughly. But it pulls the same prop as a 90 horse gasoline engine. Well, on the same boat for years, I was burning 1.2 gallons an hour, wide open, 4,000 RPM. It was really like 3,800, you know, but that bouncy ass tack on that old boat, it always said 4,000. And if I backed it off to about 3,500, which was just past being up on plane, I was burning maybe 9/10 of a gallon an hour at 20 miles an hour. And if after that thing died and I couldn't get parts for it anymore, and I put on that 90 horse gas engine, this was on an old Pro line, then I was consuming 5 gallons an hour for the same speed. My best on that 90 horse is if I really babied the bitch, I'd get maybe 3.8, 3.9 gallons an hour wide open. And that was an Evinrude Johnson EPA approved, all that bullshit. And even today, I mean, well, let's see, you've got, I forget the name of the company, but they're out of Fort Myers here. They make marine diesel outboards. They make a 300 horsepower equivalent, which is really 120 or 160 horse diesel, throwing equal to a gas 300 horse and moving boats that fast. I'm not sure if they're publicly available yet, but I do know that they are making them pretty regular for the Department of Defense. But those diesel outboards are consuming roughly 1/4, maybe 1/3 of the fuel, depending on who's operating the boat, 1/4 to 1/3 of the fuel of a 300 horsepower gas engine. Yet the EPA seems to think it's acceptable to step in there. You know how many hoops them boys had to hop through with the EPA to get that fucking motor approved? If they hadn't had all kind of financial backing, that motor would have never ever made it into production. Anyway, that's my views on the EPA. They're basically a hindrance to creativity and innovation in whether it's the automotive, the motorcycle, or the aviation industry. The aviation industry, like I said, you've got that extra hurdle with the FAA to get the engine approved as well, but you know, whoever's up there making all these EPA laws, you need to get rid of them and get somebody in there that's going to think and say, hey, you know what, if they stay under this, great, they're legal. If we catch them going over off the showroom floor or straight out of the factory, because, you know, users do modify stuff, then they're illegal and they're going to get busted. But meantime, if somebody's producing a motor that stays within below their maximum outputs as far as, you know, what can pollute the ozone or noise or whatever, great. The EPA should just step back and let them. Instead of saying, hey, alright, prove it first. I mean, most people don't have those kind of resources. Nor is the average man able to afford those kind of resources. Nor does the average man know how to jump through all those hoops. There's my opinion. Y'all welcome to yours. Holler at y'all fuckers and fuck yes later.